Welcome to the most epic showdown. Well, as epic as you could possibly get between two 3-row soccer mom or soccer dad SUVs.
The new CX-90 with the inline-6 turbo and the all-new Grand Highlander with a turbocharged hybrid 4-cylinder. Let's go over the pros and cons of each SUV to help you figure out which one is right for you. Of course, on the exterior, appearance is subjective, but I will say they are great looking SUVs. The Toyota has a much more bolder and squared off look, giving it a more rugged appearance. It's also about half an inch longer and almost 2 inches taller. Meanwhile, the CX-90 is about 0.2 inches wider, so even though the Grand Highlander appears a little bit bigger from the outside, they actually have relatively similar dimensions. The Mazda, on the other hand, has a more upscale premium look. It has a curvier body, the body lines are rounder, and it definitely looks fancier, not only on the outside,
but inside as well. The interior on the CX-90 is overachieving with like Lexus quality materials. You got suede on the dashboard now, you got really nice stitching across. You have these Windsor tan seats with a black stripe, and they're ultra suede with leather on the side. Really nice wood here and very nice touch points pretty much throughout the car. You have a 12.3 inch UI now with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto wirelessly, of course. And you have the standard Mazda UI, which isn't as good as the Toyota one, but it's all right. Navigation I would probably never use in this car. You do have a digital dashboard as well. It's really nice looking, but the only thing that you can really do is this one input button. You can view your tire pressure, your fuel economy, your eye active sense, and any warnings. It's pretty simple, really not much that you can customize. You do get a pretty nice heads-up display with your traffic signs and your speed limits also on there as well. Of course, you get wireless charging, Bose speakers. The center console is pretty shallow. You get this much depth in it. You get 2 USB-C ports in there, 2 cup holders here. You have this control knob here that you can use to control the screen, but you can also use the touch screen, which is nice. The shift knob is pretty traditional. It's pretty simple to use. You got your drive selector here with sport, normal, and off-road mode. Also, you do get a pretty nice 360 camera, which you can activate using this button. You have a few different views that you can choose from, including a curved view and a semi-transparent view. These seats are also ventilated and heated, and you do get heated steering wheel, but it only heats the side. You have a nice and big panoramic sunroof, and you get double pane glass up front to keep the cabin quieter. Of course, memory seating as well, and power steering wheel. You get a traditional mirror. You don't get the cool digital mirror that you get in the Grand Highlander though. It is very nice in here. Let's hop into the back seat and see how that's like. Hopping into the rear, we have huge doors, and stepping on into the second row, we have quite a bit of space. You can recline these seats, and you can also slide them back and forth. Right now, they're at middle position. These seats are also heated and ventilated. You get 2 USB-C ports, your own climate control back here, sunshades, the same seating material, pretty much all the same soft points as well. It's really nice and comfortable in the second row. This is configured for the 6-seater configuration, but you can get it in 7 or 8. But in the Turbo S premium trim, you can only get it in 6 seats. All right, hopping into the third row, it's pretty simple. You just move that seat back, and you just crawl right on in. And you get a decent amount of space, but we gotta move the second seat to make it match the Highlander. And there's not a lot of foot room. As you can see, you kind of have to like squeeze in between the seats. Legroom is all right if you're under 5'8". Pretty nice headroom back here as well. but of course the space back here isn't as good as a Grand Highlander. You do get 2 USB-C ports, one for each outboard seat, and relatively small windows. These seats are comfier than the Grand Highlander seats though, but you just get less space. The Grand Highlander isn't nearly as fancy and nice as the Mazda, but it is more practical in here. You get a lot more space. You got a center console that's way bigger, and you have this little tray here. You got more space here. You even have a little cubby for your phone, wireless charging. You got the brand new Toyota Lexus shifter, which is interesting. You have brake hold, you have your drive modes down here, and then you have a USB-C port here, a USB-C port here, and a USB-C port there as well. You got your 360 camera view here with a bunch of different views that you can go through on this 12.3-inch infotainment system, which is actually a lot easier to use than the Mazda one. You can only use the touch screen to control it. You get your digital mirror, which is a nice feature because the Mazda doesn't have that. And you have another 12.3-inch digital dashboard, which is way smarter than the CX-90 one. You can change a lot of the views. You can have different styles. You have your energy monitor. You have your all-wheel drive, torque ratio, and you have a bunch of different things that you can change in here. Of course, you do have a heads-up display. You got JBL speakers, which don't sound as good as the Bose in the Mazda though. Pretty decent finishes in here. You got this triangle-looking pattern thing, which is interesting. Memory seating, and the heated steering wheel heats the entire wheel in here, unlike the Mazda, which only does the side. Just like the CX-90, you do get a little bit of ultra suede in the middle, but most of it is just leather. Heated and ventilated seats, of course, and of course, the big panoramic sunroof. All right, hopping into the second row, of course, nice and big opening. There is so much space back here. You don't get the full-size center console here. Instead, you get this removable center bin. Of course, you can get this configured in a 6, 7, or 8-seater. You get heated and ventilated seats back here, as well as your own climate control. You have your AC 120-volt outlet, as well as a USB-C port for each seat. And there's just so much space back here. Of course, you're gonna notice that 2-inch height difference with the headroom. And the panoramic sunroof back here is bigger as well. Also, you get your sunshades back here. And then when you hop into the third row, you can hop through the side or the middle. There is also more space back here compared to the Mazda. You can recline the seat. Now you have so much more space back here. You also get a USB-C port for each outboard seat. The seating is kind of like a theater seating style where you're a bit higher than the rest. You can still see outside the front windshield, and you also have massive third row windows back here. So you don't feel nearly as claustrophobic as you do in the CX-90. And again, just a lot more space. All right, let's see which car has the faster trunk. Okay, that one took longer because it also goes higher. This one doesn't go that high. Yeah. So if you're like higher than 6 foot, then you might touch the roof of the trunk. All right, behind the third row in the CX-90, you get 16 cubic feet of space. You do get your 120 outlet back here, as well as a 12 volt. You have a light here and also a light here, which is really helpful at nighttime. No spare tire though, you get a little bit of storage space. Onto the Grand Highlander, you do get quite a bit more space. You have 21 cubic feet behind the third row, and you also don't have a spare tire. Actually, you might have a compact spare tire underneath here, is what it says, for temporary use. You also get a AC 120 outlet, as well as your JBL sub back here. No lights here, you get one tiny little light here, which at nighttime isn't really that great. And 98 cubic feet of space with the second row folded in the Grand Highlander. And when you fold the second row down, you get 75 cubic feet of space in the CX-90.
So yeah, the nicer interior goes to the CX-90, while the more practical interior goes to the Grand Highlander. Enough said though, let's drive them.
Okay, so both SUVs have 3 different engine options. This Grand Highlander gets either a 2.4 liter turbocharged non-hybrid engine, or a 2.5 liter hybrid engine, no turbo, or the one we have here today, which combines both, the 2.4 liter turbocharger, and a hybrid battery. Back then, people would think you're insane for putting such a small engine in such a big vehicle. This car weighs about 4,900 pounds, but this thing is actually fast. 362 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. And that's insane from such a small motor. And it actually sounds pretty cool. You can even hear the turbo whooshes. All right, in the CX-90, we also have 3 different engine options. The first 2 are both 3.3 liter inline 6s with a mild hybrid turbo setup. The base engine makes 280 horsepower, which is a little bit more powerful than the base Toyota engine, and it's also way more efficient than the non-hybrid Grand Highlander. This one we have here today is the flagship engine, which is the same engine, but it's tuned a little bit differently. It makes 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque, which isn't as powerful as the Grand Highlander Hybrid Max engine in the Toyota, but it's still a great motor, and it sounds pretty good too. And kind of loud, and you can also hear that turbo whoosh. And there's also a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle version, which you can plug in and charge at home, and it's great for short commutes under 26 miles as you don't have to use any gas. The entry-level motor on the CX-90 is a better buy than the non-hybrid Grand Highlander, in my opinion, because of its extra power. It's better fuel economy with the standard mild hybrid technology and a lower entry price point. You also get standard all-wheel drive on the CX-90 in America and Canada, while you only get standard all-wheel drive in Canada while it's an option in the US. But if you're considering this top-of-the-line engine or the hybrid or hybrid max in the Grand Highlander, it's a whole different ballpark. So for now, let's compare these 2 top-of-the-line motors in both cars. Okay, let's put it in sport mode with our drive selector right here. You got sport, normal, and off-road. Come on a complete stop, brake boost, and okay, it gets going, and it's actually pretty loud. You get to 60 miles per hour in 6.4 seconds. It's about 51 pounds lighter than the Toyota, and it makes a little less power, but it sounds good. I can't get over it. It kind of sounds supercharged at times, and apparently this sound that they're injecting in is the same sound that comes from the engine. It's not just completely artificial, and it makes sense because it's inline 6, which they all sound pretty good. Okay, let's put it in sport mode. Cool animations from the dashboard, and let's brake boost it. This thing is pretty quick. 5.6 seconds to 60 miles per hour, which is indeed fast for such a small motor. It has a ton of power, and the shifts are pretty smooth. In the hybrid, you get a 6-speed automatic, while the regular 4-cylinder turbo gets the 8-speed auto. The engine will also deactivate when you don't need that much power. You'll see an EV light come on, and that means the engine's off, and it only runs on the hybrid battery. There are also a few different drive modes that you can get in the Grand Highlander. There's normal, there's sport, eco, and there's also a mud and sand mode, a rock mode, and a snow mode. The multi-terrain select just changes how the car modulates its traction system. So I'm pretty sure if you're going off-roading, this is the better buy. The suspension in the Grand Highlander is tuned a little bit softer than the Mazda, but it's not too floaty. It's actually a pretty perfect setup. The steering is quite light and it handles well, but I wish the steering was a little bit more communicative because you kind of don't feel a lot of it compared to the Mazda. All right, quick little race between the Grand Highlander and the CX-90. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Yeah, that's a little bit faster, but it's actually relatively similar. And then let's try it from a roll. Both cars are in sport mode. 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, the Grand Highlander is gone. But the Mazda actually keeps up pretty well, but of course, with that extra power and of course torque. Even with that extra 51 pounds, the Grand Highlander is still faster. The CX-90 might not be as quick, but it's still no joke. It's fast, responsive, and the 8-speed auto does a great job getting it through gears. Where it shines most is how this thing handles. It might not have a multi-terrain select off-road mode, but what they do have is a rear-wheel bias all-wheel drive system, which is something they pulled out of BMW's books. It has a more rigid suspension setup. The steering is much more responsive. It's nicely weighted, which is a little troublesome in tight parking lots, but it makes up for it around these corners because this thing handles so much better. Around this turn, you just send it a little bit, the rear just rotates with that bias all-wheel drive, and it's quick. It might not be as quick in theory, but it's a lot more fun. It's impressive how well this thing handles. And the brakes are pretty good too. Yeah, this thing is great. All right, let's put it back into normal mode for a sec to make it a little bit more quiet, and it's actually a much more premium riding here. It's quieter. There's double pane glass in the Toyota too, and they have it here, but this BMW-like steering, the handling, and it's more luxurious and refined. Ride quality, it speaks German luxury. Like the Toyota already feels really nice, but this is on a different level. This feels like it's competing with Lexus cars. The suspension is set up a little bit stiffer, so it's not as comfy per se over bumps, but it's well worth it because it just handles so much better. If you want the better engine in general or a comfier ride, the Highlander would win. But for a more premium ride and better handling and agility, the Mazda is definitely the winner here. In terms of fuel economy, the Grand Highlander Hybrid Turbo Max achieves a combined MPG of 27 miles per gallon. And the CX-90, even for a non-fully hybrid vehicle, it achieves 25 miles per gallon, which is actually relatively similar. And it's able to achieve that because it runs on a 48-volt mild hybrid battery system, which is kind of what Mercedes and BMW and a lot of these German manufacturers are doing now, because it's able to shut off when you don't need the engine as well. But either way, it's insane to believe that these three-row SUVs that make this much power are able to achieve that fuel economy, which a couple years ago felt like that's impossible. But if you want better fuel economy, you should consider the CX-90 PHEV or the hybrid non-turbo Grand Highlander, which that car can achieve a combined 37 miles per gallon. But for short commutes under 26 miles, you should consider the PHEV CX-90. It really just depends on your lifestyle. In terms of safety system, both cars have a whole suite of tech. You have Toyota Sense 3.0 with a range of features such as pre-collision system with pedestrian detection, lane departure alert with steering assist, blind spot monitors, front and rear cross traffic alert, traffic sign recognition, automatic high beams, and radar cruise control with lane trace assist. And the CX-90 basically gets all the same features that the Grand Highlander has, but the Grand Highlander has a bit more advanced radar cruise control, and it also has proactive drive. The cruise control on the Grand Highlander works a bit better. It's not as finicky, and it uses a camera mounted on the steering wheel to watch your eyes, so in a traffic jam you actually don't need to use your hands at all. And the proactive drive, which uses a camera and AI to assist with driving, it provides gentle braking into curves or gentle braking and steering support when there are other cars around you, especially to control distance between you and the preceding vehicle. It kind of mildly slows you down without being in cruise control mode, and it makes it super safe, but it can be a little bit intrusive, so I turn it off. But it's a nice feature that is available.
So yeah, both cars have their own unique benefits. It's kind of hard to really say which one is better than which. It kind of just depends on your needs, priorities, and lifestyle. The pricing is a bit funky depending on whether you live in Canada or the United States. In America, if you're going to spend $58,000 USD for an upper level trim on either cars, the The Grand Highlander Hybrid Max Platinum is the bargain. It's the most powerful engine and also quite fuel efficient with a combined 27 miles per gallon. The CX-90 fully loaded in the Turbo S Premium Plus trim, aka the signature trim in Canada, is $60,000 USD, so slightly more expensive than the Grand Highlander, only in the US though. In Canada, however, the same spec'd out Grand Highlander is 67,000 Canadian, while the same Mazda is 63,000 Canadian, which makes a Mazda 4K cheaper in Canada, but about $2,000 more expensive in the US. And it's also kind of a huge bargain considering that 63 Canadian is only 46,000 US dollars. That's a great deal for that car. For the entry-level trim, the CX-90 offers better value. For the most efficient non-plug-in option, you'll want the Grand Highlander non-turbo hybrid. For a plug-in option, the only choice here is the CX-90, which also offers a more premium and upscale interior, but at the same time, the most practical option here is the Grand Highlander. They both have their ups and downs, and they have so much to offer. And I love the fact that they're so configurable, especially when it comes to engine choices to fit everyone's needs and preferences. And really, you can't go wrong with either because they're both great three-row SUVs. As always, thanks for watching.
Today we have this all-new Mazda CX-90 and we're putting it up against the good old Acura MDX. This is about 66,000 Canadian dollars, fully spec'd out in the signature trim, also known as Premium Plus in the US. And we're putting it up against the second from the lowest trim Acura MDX A-Spec. It's about $4,000 more than a CX-90. Let's see if it's worth it.